Nobody wants to go to hell. Like, nobody wants to have to go down to the bottom and experience your life spiraling out of control and you're just going down faster and faster and faster and just everything's going down to the bottom. Like, nobody wants to have to experience that. But here's the thing. That actually, I think that pattern, even though that's a destructive pattern and it's not good, right? Like, we don't want it, we don't like it. Actually, in the ultimate sense, I think for all of our journeys, it is a necessary part of the journey. Like, we have to actually make mistakes. We have to actually go down. We have to be willing to spiral to go down, so that even though it's a negative direction, we don't want to be going there. Sometimes we have to get to the bottom of the pit in order to begin the upward trajectory, right? We can think of all the examples in our lives where it's like you talk about people having to get to the bottom of the barrel before all of a sudden they look at their situation and they say, you know what? This is no good. I cannot continue to repeat the same pattern. I need to turn my life around. We use this kind of language, right? Turning my life around, or whatever it might be. Repentance is sort of the spiritual or the religious word for it, but it literally means turning around and going the opposite way. And sometimes you have to get to the bottom. Sometimes you don't have to go all the way down. Sometimes you go a certain way down and then you're able to reorient yourself and begin to move back up. But you have to go down to some degree, because if we think about the different peaks of our lives, it's like you can think of your life as sort of like a mountain range, right? Where you can see the peaks in the distance of the places that you want to get. But between where you are now and where that peak is that you want to get, there's a valley. You have to be willing to descend into the valley or not be able to ascend or continue the journey at all. And that is the thing that is the scariest, right? And that is actually the depiction in Dante's Inferno that is the most horrifying, which is not the descent, right? Dante, the hero, is making the descent, and then we know he goes all the way down to the bottom, and then he begins the ascent again. And actually, it's interesting, as he goes all the way down to the bottom, he passes through all of these different circles and these different cycles. And what he goes through is what he experiences is he sees people who are trapped in this particular cycle, right? So there's these different circles of hell, these 9 different circles. And in each one, there are people who are going round and round and round and round, but they're not escaping. They're stuck. They're stuck in this pattern. They're stuck in this never-ending loop, this cycle of self-destruction and misery and humiliation and suffering, but they can't get free because they've been caught in this cycle. And Dante doesn't get caught. He goes as a visitor. He sees it. He takes it as a warning, and then he continues the descent. But for us, if we're unwilling to continue to go down, if we're unwilling to continue the journey, we can get caught in a cycle. We think about it in ourselves, right? I mean, this is what addiction is, right? Like, you think about addiction, or you think about self-destructive thought patterns, right? Or you think about relationships, where relationships get caught in this sort of thing, or you think about just all of the various kinds of ways in which we can get stuck in a situation in our lives. We think about anxiety, right? This sort of mental loop. We think about depression, this kind of continual spinning of the wheels, like all of these kinds of things. And it could be psychological patterns, they could be spiritual patterns, and there can be all kinds of things that cause us to get stuck, right? Trauma, right? You think about trauma. It's like trauma is a thing that causes you to keep reliving the same thing over and over and over again, right? And it's like we want to get free. We want to get free from that thing. But in order to get free from it, you have to confront it. You have to break free. There has to be this sort of move to break out of that cycle. And sometimes it means going down and facing the things that you don't want to face. And that's what causes us to resist, or one of the things that can be an obstacle to our making the descent is that we're afraid. We don't want to see what's down there at the bottom, right? Like, we'd rather just keep going in circles. But here's the thing. That's worse. Like, just going in circles forever and ever and ever is worse than making the descent and being willing to confront what's down there at the bottom. And that's what Dante does. He goes through the circles. He goes all the way down to the bottom. And at the bottom, it's interesting, is the devil, right? The devil is at the bottom. And it's interesting here because the devil is also stuck. Right? The devil is this this depiction of that which is most corrupt, that which is most depraved, that which is most dark and twisted and all of the rest. And he's at the very, very bottom. But and here's this moment where Dante gets all the way to the bottom, and then he begins the ascent, right? He can get to the bottom. He comes face to face with the horrific vision, right? He sees the devil face to face. He sees, how bad and how dark it can get. And then he turns around and he goes back up. But the devil doesn't, right? The devil stays there. Why? Because the devil is also trapped, essentially. And where the devil is trapped is he's trapped in bitterness. It's like he's gotten all the way down to the bottom. And that's a trap for us as well. That it's possible that the experiences of our life have become so destructive and so painful, and things have spiraled so far out of control. You can go all the way down to the bottom and then just stay there, right? And that's what it is to crash and burn, and then stay in that place, right? This is Milton, right? It's a Milton Paradise Lost. Better to reign in hell than to be a slave in heaven is Satan's sort of motto, you could say. He'd rather be the king of the pit than to humble himself and then begin the journey back up again. He'd just rather stay at the bottom. And there's, instances of our lives where we maybe start to experience that sort of temptation. I'd rather... you see people who are stuck in a really miserable situation, but it just almost seems like they've just chosen to stay there. There's almost this kind of weird satisfaction of being at the bottom. And that's a trap. Like, we don't want to get caught in that, right? We need to be willing to go to the bottom, but then to be able to experience the humiliation and then the repentance of the return and the journey beginning back up again. But again, even on the return journey, we still have to be careful because you can still get caught in a cycle. You can still get caught. Even if you're going upward, at some point you might just get to a place and be like, that's good enough. Right? And that is the trap. Like, that is hell too. It's not just going down, it's getting caught in a cycle where you just stay there. Like, you get to a point where your life is getting better, and then all of a sudden you get to a certain point and you're like, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm just going to stay here because I don't want to have to continue the painful process of change and growth and transformation. So I just want to stay right here. And we can get caught in those kinds of cycles. And here's the thing that's so scary about this is, the idea of hell, the concept of hell. People have a hard time believing in this concept of hell, but And it's understandable, but I think a lot of that is because almost because we don't want to believe that it could be true, right? Like, we always want to believe that we could break free, right? We can overcome anything. We can always be better ourselves. We can always change. We can always grow, and like, that's the hopeful sort of view that we have. And we need to hold that view because, so long as there's life, there is hope. But I think in our most honest moments, I think if we're being perfectly honest, I think it is very conceivable that there could be a state that one could get to where you become so entrenched in a particular cycle of thinking, right? A particular way of being, a particular pattern, a circle that you've been stuck in for so long that you could actually get so stuck as to be there forever. Like, I think that's conceivable. And some people might not think so. Maybe some people will say, no, you can always break free. But I don't know, because, we even know this, even sort of like, neurobiologically, right? It shows that even mentally, like, by repeating the same patterns over and over again, those repeated patterns become habits. They become habit forming, and then they actually form neurological grooves, right? We talk about getting stuck in a rut, right? Like, literally, you can get stuck in a pattern of thinking. And if you stay in that pattern long enough, it seems conceivable to me anyway that you could actually get stuck in that permanently. And that's hell. Like, that's what hell would be. And so we want to think about, each of these different circles of hell, right? They're depicted as being a different sin, right? Or a different way of missing the mark, or a different kind of destructive pattern, or something that's, whether it's pride, or whether it's lust, or whether it's greed, or whether it's lies. Like, all of these different depictions in the story are just people who've gotten caught in a pattern. And that's where we have to be really careful, that we always need to be checking ourselves and be like, okay, what are the patterns that are forming themselves in my life, and where do I need to descend, and where am I kind of stalling the ascent, and where do I need to begin that process back?